Well, I'm really pleased to be able to have a chat with the Reverend Melanie Smith over in Fiji. Melanie, it's really good to see you. You and I have known each other for quite a long time in a variety of contexts.
Yeah.
But of course, folk here in the National Synod of Scotland don't know you. So I wonder if you could just introduce yourself briefly and including just saying something about how you come to be in Fiji.
Thank you so much, Paul. Well, Bula Vinaka, Synod of Scotland, it's great to be with you virtually from Fiji. As Paul said, I'm a United Reformed Church minister, and I'm just 5 months into a 4-year term as partner in mission at the Pacific Theological College here in Suva in Fiji through the Council for World Mission. I'm actually here alongside my husband Mark Meacher, but he apologises that he cannot join you this evening or morning for Paul because he's actually at the World Council of Churches in Germany at the moment. So it feels very odd to be here in Fiji speaking to Paul in England with my husband in Germany. But this is the wonderful world of church connections that we now live in.
Thanks, Melanie. Well, we'll hope to catch up with Mark another time. I'm sure we can manage that. As you say, you're just fairly recently into this new sphere of service, very different from past spheres of service in Southend and London. I'm just wondering what it felt like, and if you can just think back that little while since you arrived, what were your immediate first impressions? What did it feel like arriving in Fiji?
It was a very, very long journey. It almost felt as though it was on the other side of the world, which is good because it is. But I think that there's that coming from the day before when it was snowing in London back in April and arriving in Fiji when the weather is very extreme, very strong sun, very heavy rain, but not that tropical dream where it only rains for an hour or so very heavily and then goes away for sun again. In Suva in particular, it can rain for 3 or 4 days before it stops. So sun and rain, heat and humidity, also wealth and poverty. I've travelled a little bit. And so in some ways, Fiji is not as poor as some places, and it's certainly not as rich as many places. In fact, it's on the Human Development Index, Fiji is about halfway along the list of countries, and that's really very, very obvious. There is people living subsistence lifestyles in rural places, and you've got the most gorgeous hotels which serve the most incredible food. So you're getting a real mixture of experiences right from the very start. And with the tropical sun, the colours are so very, very vibrant. The noises are so very different from the UK. Whether you can hear at the moment, the crickets are chirping away very merrily. You get the sound of the geckos shouting at you in the evening, dogs barking as you do in the UK, but it's a whole different sense. Your senses are just, it feels like they're a lot more alive here, to be perfectly honest, than sometimes on a grey day in London, or I very much guess in many parts of Scotland. So yeah, a real land of vibrancy, and nothing ever happens by half. The sense of welcome, but also the sense of difference. So it's a very exciting place to be. And yeah, it's been great. The immediate sense, and in some ways it hasn't, after 5 months, we're still getting that. We still wake up and think, is it going to rain all day, or is it going to be beating down sun all day? So there's still that sense of excitement each and every day.
That sounds great, Melanie. You've just about got me searching for my plane ticket. It sounds like a really good picture, and you've certainly described a context that's quite different for us, but it's interesting to hear that. But how come you're in Fiji? I mean, God calls us all over the place. I know that as well as anyone. But what is it that you're doing? What's the task there in Fiji for you?
Well, the very specific task that I'm doing is that I'm now director of the Women's Development Programme at the Pacific Theological College, and I am hoping to establish the Centre for Gender and Social Justice as the college tries to transition to become the Pacifica Communities University. Fiji, as well as a place of contrasts, is a place of great depth. And when I say that, there's a depth of patriarchy and gender-based violence in the country that is very, very deep. And so working on gender and social justice issues here is quite an extreme job in a way. There's no half measures. Gender-based violence rates here are some of the highest in the world, alongside the fact that it's one of the most Christian countries in the world, as are many Pacific countries, Pacific Island nations. About 65% of people are Christian here. And that isn't just a nominal Christianity, that will be church-going Christians. And alongside that, about 2/3 of women will have faced gender-based violence at some point in their lives. You add on to that the fact that the Pacific Islands are some of the most vulnerable to climate change in the world, with places like Tuvalu, the average height being about 2 meters above sea level, just over 6 foot above sea level. And so you've got people who really are living on the edge of safety, both in their very small domestic home and in their homes in a wider sense, as in the land. And as cyclones are likely to become more ferocious in the years to come, that vulnerability is felt. And how do you cope with being a Christian when you're faced with all of these external pressures? And these are big questions that I'm going to be helping to try and form a system that helps train and educate women and men to start to answer some of those questions in their own life and church context. So it really is quite a big job that I've been given. But luckily that the college has been very supportive in that the churches, the 20 churches that support the college from all over the Pacific region, are very, very supportive. But it doesn't mean that it's an easy task by any means.
That sounds really challenging, but it also sounds quite exciting. Well, I'm sure we look forward to hearing more at some point in the future as you develop some I'm sure some really good work, good courses, but certainly some big challenges there for you. What ought we to be thinking about when we think about Fiji and about you there? What in particular, what might we pray for? What are the really important, the real concerns?
The climate emergency, obviously. It really is the case that as we sit here in the middle of a very, very vast blue and rich ocean, that whilst it's beautiful, it also feels like a real threat to people's lives. Any difference in the levels is going to affect thousands and thousands of livelihoods. The cyclones, as I've mentioned, are going to get more severe. So it's a case that we've got countries out here that are actually carbon, not just carbon neutral, but carbon negative, are actually offsetting more than they are emitting. So actually, in some ways, really not just praying for the Pacific Islands, but praying for ourselves back in the UK, to make sure that our governments really do keep the promises that they made up in Glasgow just last year. And was it last year or earlier this year? Time is flying by so very, very quickly.
It was.
And last year. And that, well, in fact, you know, the pledges have made so far aren't enough, that the developed nations need to go a lot further. So that is a really urgent prayer, that it's got to be prayer through action on that one. Also, but as we've said, patriarchy is a huge issue in all of the Pacific Islands. So the strengthening of women in leadership roles, both in church and in society. For the 20 churches regionally that support the college, which includes Anglicans, Methodists, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Congregationalists, and uniting churches. So it's great to be part of an ecumenical institution, and also the college as it journeys towards university status, especially the senior leadership as it tries to make that happen. So there are a lot of prayer requests there, I'm afraid, but they're just, and they, again, it might sound a little bit silly to say that they are the tip of the iceberg when it's currently about 29 degrees, 7:30 at night here. But yeah, the climate emergency, gender justice, the ecumenical scene, and the college itself, I think, would be my top 4 prayer requests if the Synod of Scotland were so moved to pray for our situation here.
Melanie, I'm sure we will be, and it's one of the ways in which we can share in prayer. As you mentioned, we were pleased to host the COP26 conference in Glasgow, and that made a big impact on Scotland. We're very aware of the challenges, but obviously you're much more aware, much closer to them. But those other issues around gender justice, around the college, are clearly really important things, and we will pray for you. Thank you so much for talking to me. It's been really good to see you, and I know that we all here in Scotland wish you well. We send you our prayers, and we look forward to hearing more at some point in the not too distant future. Go well. God's blessings on you, and indeed on Mark. God bless you.
Bepetai, Vinaka, Vakalevu, and Mothe.